Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Scale Well podcast. I got my good friend Debra Votta here today. She's the owner of Votta Realty here in Waxhaw, North Carolina. She's a good friend of mine. She's a great mentor of mine, and I'm incredibly excited to have her on and, have her share some of her insights as a real estate professional. She's someone that I personally consider a key part of my real estate investing team. So yeah, Debra, thank you so much for coming on the show.
I'm so glad to be here, Sargis. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so
Yeah,
excited.
I know. Let's get right into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
So for those of you who may not, for people who may not know your story, can you just walk us through your background? I was looking at your LinkedIn and your website. Looks like you started out as a social worker, then you owned a daycare, and now you're a local real estate thought leader,
Yeah.
one of the most popular real estate figures in Charlotte, if not Waxhaw. So yeah, just take us through that journey and how kind of each phase led to the next.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny how you don't know where life will take you or what life prepares you for, right? So I started out, over 20 years ago as a social worker. I worked with homeless families. So for me, I've kind of come full circle because now I assist people in finding their dream home, right? So I find a lot of irony in that, and I'm grateful. So I don't mind if someone's looking to find a home for 100,000 or over 1 million. I'm fine with whatever, because what you recognize in life is that people need their needs met. Some are more lavish than others. So that journey then led me to move to North Carolina. My husband always wanted to live in the South. And so I said, oh my goodness, what am I going to do when I get there? I unfortunately suffered postpartum depression when my son was born. And I thought, gosh, there's got to be other women out there that also suffer from this. So that journey led me to open a Mommy and Me when we moved here. And Mommy and Me is not popular here in the South or in North Carolina. So what I learned, when you're in business, you learn that do or die, you have an overhead and you have to make it work. So I then turned that into a half-day preschool. And then as my children got older and I didn't necessarily need the preschool anymore, we closed our doors, and my friend called me and she's like, we're moving to North Carolina, and when I get there, we're gonna flip homes. And I said, well, if we're gonna flip homes when you get here, then I'll go get my real estate license so that when you're here, we'll keep that money in our pocket. And she said, go ahead, go do it. And I never flipped a home with her yet. That was over 10 years ago. And I love what I do every single day. I'm grateful to be a part of other people's lives. And I'm grateful for people like yourself who allow me to be part of their lives. So that's my journey here.
That's awesome. So it sounds like the underlying theme is that you just care for people, whether it's caring for the homeless or just trying to help mothers who also suffered from postpartum depression. It sounds like that's the underlying theme of your story. So is that one of the, besides trying to keep the money in-house whenever you and your friends start flipping homes, was that one of the major reasons you got into real estate, or what else was kind of a driving factor?
Truly, the driving factor was she said we're going to flip homes. And when I got into it, I'm always up for a challenge. And so I just started meeting great people and connecting with people and recognizing that I can be impactful in their lives. And what you learn, even when you're a part of real estate, and there's different types of real estate. When you're an investor, it's numbers driven. When you're a person that's purchasing your first home, it's emotionally driven. So I prefer to be there on both sides. So what I've learned is I've learned the numbers game, and I've also learned how to be there for people emotionally when they're going through their journey. So I would say that because of those connections that I had along the way, it's kept me here and it's fed my soul.
No, that's just saying it like that, I'm not sure people even realize the wisdom you just dropped. There's two sides of being a real estate broker like yourself, or a realtor, and one of them is investor driven, knowing how the numbers work, and then the other is people trying to buy their first homes, people trying to buy their last homes, their dream homes, and just being to decipher when something is an emotional purchase and when something has to make financial sense.
Correct.
So that's really cool. That was a great nugget of wisdom. So I just want to make sure that didn't fly over people's heads.
Thank you.
But yeah, shifting from real estate to just kind of like bird's eye view, the whole entrepreneur thing. It looks like you've been an entrepreneur, a small business owner your whole life. What do you like about entrepreneurship and small business ownership that you maybe didn't find working for someone else?
I love being able to pour into people. It's just who I am as a person. So I've chosen to learn a lot about entrepreneurship and learning what that means for others. If you're going to be in real estate, you better know and understand what it is to be a small business owner, but also be able to have scalability and learn what it is to even be on the developing side. In my free time, Sargis, I research everything. Enjoy research. And so I didn't know that about myself, right? The other thing that you learn when you're in business for yourself is self-exploration and knowing your own limits, knowing your strengths, knowing your challenges, and knowing how to be able to impart that in the way that you want to impart that into the world. So I would say that, I love the research aspect of things, which allows me to have success.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, being in the real estate industry and also being a business owner, and especially being real estate in the last, what is it, decade plus? Yeah, yeah, decade plus. What would you say is one of your biggest losses that you've experienced to date? Whether it's on the business side, the real estate side, just, something that was a loss, but you learned from it.
So what I've learned is every interaction has to have a learning aspect to it, or you're not growing. So I've learned that uncomfortability is scary as heck, and yet that's where growth happens. I've learned that it's okay to delay a response to somebody so that you can respond accordingly instead of responding in emotion. When you're a small business owner, you're raw. Sometimes you are forward facing, and sometimes you're meeting with someone that maybe you're not favorable of, and yet you still have to work with them. And in order to do that, you have to know yourself well enough to know what will tip the scales for you, and how are you going to work within your own confines? Because we all come to the table with our own preconceived notions of things, but that's not always how it is. It's just a perception. And although one's perception is their reality, you have to truly be open to listening to another's perception and what their reality looks like. So although challenging at times, I feel like I've learned how to endure that and overcome that.
Yeah, I can definitely relate with you there. In my young career, there's already been people that I've worked with that I don't really like them personally, but work is work, and if they're engaging me to do something like a tax return or a big bookkeeping project, I just have to put my differences aside. So I can definitely understand you there, and especially with the whole being patient and not giving the first emotional response, especially when people call me and ask for tax advice. I can't just give they're always disappointed, and I've just learned that it's really difficult to backtrack on something when you say something up front without taking the 5 or 10 minutes to go do your research and make sure that you are correct in your assumptions. So yeah, that's really wise, and hopefully people who are listening to this can learn from your mistakes, my mistakes of just calm down. You don't need to say everything on the spot. So I guess just going on the flip side of that, we all hate talking about our losses. What's one win in real estate and in business or in business that you just want to reflect on, that maybe you learned something from that our listeners can gain?
I can't say that there's one win. I think with every interaction and transaction, there's a win. There are other times that you don't sell the home that you thought you were going to sell, or you don't sell the business that you thought you were going to sell. And yet there's still a win within that, because if you're not learning, you're never winning, in my opinion. So I always choose to have a takeaway from whatever it is that I do. And it's not always a positive takeaway, Sargis. However, once you choose to process that, you make it into what you need it to be, so that you can forge forward and learn how to, work through those things as you move forward. So to me, they're always a win. There's always a win in anything that we do if you choose to make it that. So I choose to grow from it,
Yeah, it's all about mindset. You're 100% right. So going into more, the technical side of the current day market, I'm sure people have been, ringing your phone, just asking what this whole Trump buying back $200 billion in mortgage bonds, what that means for them. So, and also interest rates potentially going down because of that. What do you think is the current market sentiment? What do buyers, whether they're buying their personal homes, or what do investors need to know about today's market that maybe they're just not quite understanding?
It's funny. Everybody always talks about today's market, and the market has always been the market. There's always been challenges, from the Great Depression to today, from COVID to today, and how the market changes, right? I think that where we sometimes lose sight is, can you afford it? Can you afford that monthly payment? Because, people will have credit cards that are 29% in interest and don't think twice about the thing that they want to purchase, and they'll purchase it and pay that 29% back over time and not think twice about that. And yet you see 7% sitting on a mortgage rate, and there's a meltdown. I don't know that I quite understand that. Back in the 80s, people were paying 17 to 20%, and they made it work, right? I mean, we need shelter. What scares me more, what happens in life is we don't always have control over things, right? So what I think is a little more scary is all the prices that are rising outside of home ownership, right? I mean, we have food prices on the rise. We have all of these things, so my approach is we're always talking about this market. Well, it's what each individual makes of it, and it's about the affordability of each individual person. And so I think that we sometimes become hyper focused on things that, if you're smart about it, I don't know how much it matters to you, as long as you understand the impact and that you buffer yourself and that you put fail safes in place to have success.
Yeah, I mean, once again, it just goes back to mindset. It goes down to, can you afford it, and can you think in a long enough time horizon to see that it makes sense? I mean, Warren Buffett is famous for never selling anything because on a long enough time horizon, it all works out. So you're definitely right. Like when you zoom into the market, it's a bunch of ups and downs. But if you look at it holistically, just like you said yourself, in the 80s, there was interest rates of 15%, and somehow people made it work. So that's great insight for anyone who's listening, and anyone who wants to get into real estate. Don't try to time the market, because there's always going to be people who are like, well, I should have gotten in then. But you could be easily saying the same thing 10 years from now, like, well, I should have gotten it in 2026. Oh, interest rates were only 7%. Yeah. Who knows where interest rates go from here?
It's true.
That's great insight. Thank you for that.
I love.
So what do you think about, why do you think it's important to have the right people around you when you're going into real estate investing, just going away from the private ownership? When you go in to become a real estate investor, how important is it to have a team versus be the person to try to do everything yourself?
I think that each person has their own role, right? I work with investors who have a team of people behind them, where they have like project managers who are the people that are managing perhaps their flips, or the workmanship that are on these jobs, so that they can have their scalability and know when they're ready to release something to be sold, or whatever that looks like. So I think that each person plays their role. It depends upon how you choose to set up whatever it is that you're doing. I think that what I've become more of most recently is a mentor and a coach to small business owners, because when you're first starting out, you don't have that team yet, right? So how do you build that team, or how do you learn what role each person's supposed to play, and when do you do that? So I think that those are things we oftentimes need to be more cognizant of, rather than how big it has to be. It sometimes doesn't have to be big. There's times where we can sub things out. There are times where we can wait sometimes till something closes and then be able to pay certain things. So I just think it depends upon who you're speaking to. Always know your audience. I think it's really important, especially as a business owner and a forward-facing business owner, know your audience and know what their needs are. Have an understanding to the fullest potential that you have to understand their business, so that you can help forge them forward and help them where they are.
Yeah. I definitely think that what you were saying about mentorship and coaching, it's important to have people on your team, like a good agent or broker like yourself, who has been there, who's done it, who's seen it herself, and can now guide you through it. So I think that's very important, to have like-minded people on your team, 100%. This is, at the end of the day, I am a CPA, so we got to get into the boring tax and bookkeeping stuff.
Okay.
So from your experience, what are some tax or bookkeeping mistakes that you see either investors making early on or small business owners making early on? What are those mistakes you see?
All of them. No, so I think it starts with how they opened their business to begin with. Do they know tax advantages? Do they know the difference between an LLC and an incorporation, right? Do they know the difference between that and or a sole proprietorship, and what the tax ramifications might be if they don't file things adequately, right? How to tax shelter things. Do you know what it is to have a home in a trust? How do you do that, right? Do you do that before or after you close? It's usually after you close. A lot of people think walking into their purchase that they can purchase it in an LLC, and oftentimes they might not be able to do that, and they might have to do that afterwards. So I think that whether it be a home and if that's your business, investing in homes and things like that, that's one aspect of things. But as you are as a business owner, how do you get your LLC? What's an EIN number? Huh? What? What type of tax professional do I use? Do I have to use a CPA? And does that CPA offer bookkeeping services? Because I think that when you're, especially as small business owners, you don't know what the heck you're doing. I'm going to walk down the hall and I'm going to go talk to, I'm going to go talk to the finance department. Oh, I am the finance department. You know, so I think having key players like yourself to start out with is smart. I think it's very smart to make sure if people come to their CPA first to understand how to set it up, right?
I think the two problems you just highlighted is being underprepared, not knowing where you're going from the start. And then and most people probably start in that category. And then there's the problem of being overprepared. People who want to get the trust immediately, who want to open every LLC, and it's just kind of analysis of paralysis, just being kind of too smart for their own good and just not getting started. So there's that too. But is there a strategy that you've seen throughout the years, that you've seen either business owners or investors use throughout the years, that just kind of pops out at you, something just interesting you find, whether it's tax or bookkeeping, and what is that?
It blew my mind when I learned, and I'm sure you know this because you're smart yourself, and I know you're savvy. Learning that an LLC can own another LLC. And I don't even know that I understand or know the depth of that and how deep that can go. But I do know that, when you wear your realtor hat, you become many different things. And one of them is an investigator. And sometimes I'm looking to learn who the owner is of a home or of a business. And I might have to go 3 LLCs deep to find it. So I would love for you to shed some light, if you could, sir, on what that looks like from the CPA side of things.
Yeah, so from a tax perspective, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. It does help you legally. What it does cause me is a lot of headaches trying to find all the EINs and what owns what. So that's a bit of a headache. It really helps to protect you legally. Let's say you have a tenant in one house and that one house is in an LLC. Well, if they come after you, they can just go after that one house. And where a lot of people, I've heard horror stories or I've read horror stories where people just won't put anything in LLCs and it's all in their personal name. And if a tenant injures themselves at one home, they try to come after the whole shebang, everyone's, someone's whole portfolio. So definitely a big mistake. So if you're listening to this and you have, 2, 3, 4 properties, start putting them in different LLCs just to protect yourself,
I love that.
So yeah. So what separates investors who successfully scale, in your opinion and in your experience, from those who just kind of stay stuck?
That's where I do think sometimes the market can play a role, right? We are in a softer market right now, at least here in our region. I can only speak obviously to our region, and price point makes a difference, right? So what people don't recognize sometimes is it's great to have a flip that you want to sell then for $250, which looks great to you as an investor. Oh, I'm selling this for $250. I should sell it like this. And years ago, that was a great head. I think in today's market, the people who can afford a $250,000 home actually get hit harder with that interest rate, right? So it actually hits their pocket harder, and then they're forced to think about, well, should I just stay renting because I'm not getting ahead by purchasing this $250,000 home? So what I've learned from that is you need to then get with a savvy lender who, I never used to believe in like an ARM, but what I've learned over time is sometimes an ARM even has its own place in the world. So sometimes when a person has an ARM, it brings the interest rate down, and it's not as impactful on that monthly payment. So I think, on one end where investors sometimes think it's great to have a cheaper home, it could also impact their bottom line. It might not sell as quick. So I think, knowing when to hold and when to fold, so to speak, there's a song about that. But I think that that's really important too, for them to know what they're walking into and to be savvy enough to know what they need behind them monetarily to be able to to have success.
What do you mean by an arm? Shed some light on that.
So an ARM, sorry, thank you. So a 7-year ARM is a mortgage it has a 30-year amortization. However, if you don't pay it within 7 years, there'll be a huge balloon payment. Okay, you can refinance though, but it locks that rate in for 7 years, and so those rates right now are a bit lower than your everyday year amortization loan. So we look at those now and say, hey, well, if I can get, a lower interest rate even for 7 years, it buys me time that the interest rate could potentially go down and I could refinance before that 7th year.
So what are the benefits versus drawbacks of doing something like that?
The benefits are it's interest rate driven.
Yeah.
So, I just had one of my lenders was able to get one of my clients in the midst of most people getting a 6.5 to 7% interest rate. He got them a 4.9% interest rate because they bought into that. There's so many things I'm not as familiar with, which I wish I was more familiar with on the lending side. So out of tongues because it's not my area of expertise. But what I have learned is that he was able to do more with someone having a 7-year ARM versus someone having a straight 30-year mortgage.
Yeah, that's awesome. For anyone who's listening and you just can't make the deal work, try looking into something like that. Obviously, you are on the clock once you get it 7 years later, but hopefully within 7 years you can make something happen with it. And like Deborah said, you can always refinance later. But yeah, what you were saying, what separates successful investors from people who just kind of stay middle of pack. I think you're right. It does have to do with the market, but once again, if you're in the game long enough, eventually you'll get lucky on a deal or two, and that could just catapult you into something completely different. So. Yeah, I agree with you there.
Well, I think luck is a good thing, and I also think that for the more savvy investor, knowing when to sell and knowing when to hold. So for those who bought maybe many years ago, you have to look at the market. That's when the market really is important, because if you can sell and you can sell at a higher rate, and that would allow you to diversify your investment even more so, then you have to know those things. Right? I think it's important to have a good real estate partner along the way for that. I pride myself on doing comparable market analysis and making sure that the people I represent can make top dollar. And I'm honest and truthful with them on, might not be the time because you might not get that investment back right this moment, right? So I think it's smart to know, it's a numbers game and it's a timing game when it comes to at least, on the housing investment side.
Yeah. No, once again, it just, like you're right. It goes back to having a good team and having intelligent people, talking in your ear and making sure that you're informed before you make the decision. All right, let's get into some rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite business or real estate book that you'd recommend to people?
I love Ninja Selling. I love it because it teaches you how to stay in front of people. I think that oftentimes, no matter what business you're in, you never forget where you came from. That's what I've always learned, right? Because you could go back to where you were. Just to have some clarity in that, Ninja Selling teaches you how to stay in front of your people long term. And I think that sometimes when you're in small business, you forget how to do that, or we get caught up in what we're doing right now. And you're leaving people behind that could be walking alongside of you as opposed to being left behind. So I found that book was helpful for me and a constant reminder of staying in front of the very people that got me where I am.
Yeah, no, that one's definitely going on my list.
Okay.
For sure.
Well, I have a copy here for you, so you have to come here and get it.
I'll
send one to you. I will send one to you.
Yeah, send one to me to the FedEx. When it comes to cash flow versus appreciation, which one do you think is more important?
Oof. That's a hard one. I think they both play a role in whatever you might need it for, right? I'm sure you can probably speak more to that on the tax side of things. I was actually speaking to a client that about appreciation and depreciation because they both matter also, right? Because that can put you over in certain circumstances if you look at appreciation. But sometimes you can add depreciation back into something to put you in a better spotlight. So I think they play a role when needed. And cash flow obviously always plays a role. I think what's important is sometimes people lose sight that, just because they paid cash for something doesn't mean that they're an automatic cash flow. I think that gets lost in translation because it's still always a numbers game. And just because you were able to pay cash for it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a cash flow. So I think that people having an understanding of that and knowing the difference and having that educational component is also important. So having the right partners in place like yourself to help people understand that and navigate that when necessary is really important.
Yeah, it's such a hard question. I wanted to ask it just to trip you up because there's
Yeah.
just so many things, so many factors that play into it. Is it your personal home or is it an investment property? Did you buy it cash? Did you get it with a mortgage? What are your goals? What are your long-term goals, your short-term goals? So much goes into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry to ask you that.
No, I'm glad that you did. I hope I met your expectation with my answer.
Yeah, you did. You were doing a little bit of ninja, some ninja stuff with that one too. What's the biggest real estate myth?
That you have to have 20% down to purchase a home. It's not true. You can have as little as 3.5% down. You can have no money down. Depending upon if you're in a rural area, there are loans like a USDA loan, which is an agricultural loan, and 0% down. But on the flip side of that, it means you're financing the entire amount, right?
Yeah.
So that monthly payment then might go up. However, a USDA loan has a lower interest rate. So I chose to learn the lending side of things before I actually learned my own role because I wanted to learn how to vet people while I was speaking to them to ensure that I can have success in our transactions. So, I think it's important.
Yeah. No, just going on that, my first property I got for 0% down, and I was very happy at closing day because I ended up getting some money back. But then the first monthly payment hit me hard because
Yeah.
I didn't realize with I think less than 10% down or 15% down, I had to pay a crazy
PMI.
insurance amount. And yeah, what is it, PMI?
Yeah, so it's private mortgage insurance. It depends upon the loan. So it could be mortgage insurance premium, private mortgage insurance, funding, a funding amount. So it depends upon the loan. That's either way, they're all insurance for the lending institution so that they can ensure that they're going to get paid if you should default. Isn't that fun?
Yeah, no, let me tell you, I was the happiest camper at closing day, and then that first email came for the monthly payment. I was like, what?
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess you live and you learn.
Well, what's scary to me is that that's something you should have known well before you actually got the monthly payment. That's
Yeah.
something that, you should have known from the lending institution and the attorney that might have worked with you. Again, having the right partner in place, those are things that I'm kind of a stickler about. I want to make sure my
1000%.
people are well informed so that you're not shocked from that first email or that first statement that you receive in the mail. So,
1000%. But hey, you live and you learn, huh?
yes, you do. Absolutely.
What is your next big goal?
My next big goal is to be a pillar in my community, to be known for being a coach for small business owners, new small business owners. A lot of realtors don't place an emphasis on that. They rather work with the people who have already earned their money for a living and their mid to end of career. I love working with the people who are new to their career. It's invigorating, it's exciting, but there's pitfalls along the way, and some people, I believe, should be educated on those before they experience them, because to experience them early on could actually erode your business. So I'd rather assist them on the front end to help them navigate that.
That's awesome. Do you have like a coaching program?
I do.
Or
I
do
have
you
a
have,
coaching
yeah,
program.
yeah,
I
plug
do.
that. Where can listeners find that, for anyone starting a new
I'll
business?
be honest with you, Sargis, I'm still building on that. I opened a
Okay.
real estate school last year, and within that real estate school is the business coaching part. I'm actually partnering with our local community college. I'll be offering counseling services through the college as well as coaching services through my.
That is amazing. That just goes back full circle to the beginning of our conversation. There seems to be an underlying theme in your story, in your journey through life of just helping people. So that's awesome.
Thanks.
So if you could, so going once again on that kind of topic, what's one piece of advice you would give to someone just starting their journey, whether it's in business or real estate?
I think that, I used to fear the unknown, and not to say that I don't fear the unknown. I've chosen to walk toward the unknown so that you don't have to fear it, right? Knowing all the things, or knowing all the things that could be hurdles to you as you move forward in your journey. If you know them on the front end, they're no longer hurdles, right? They're actually just things you navigate through, as opposed to finding them to be a challenge, or even a wall for you as you move through your journey. So I think having somebody by your side, and having somebody be able to explain the bigger picture, and knowing the tools that you need to get there, I think that's really important.
Yeah, 1000% I agree with you there. It's always good to have a mentor, like you were saying earlier, someone who's been there, someone whose mistakes you can learn from and maybe fast track some of your progress. So that's an awesome piece of advice. Where can listeners find you and connect with you, work with you?
Yeah, they can always call me. My number is 704-909-9630, or they can email me at votarealty@gmail.com. It's V as in Victor, O, T as in Tom, T as in Tom, A, realty@gmail.com.
Well, thank you for your time today, Deborah. I really appreciate you. Hopefully our listeners got a lot of value. I know I did myself. Really, really appreciate your time. And, if you're someone out there who's a business owner or real estate investor, please reach out to Deborah. And also, if you're looking for tax help as a business owner or real estate investor, please reach out to me. We're currently accepting new clients. But yeah, thank you. Thank you again, Deborah.
You know what, Sargis? I would love it if people knew how to get in touch with you. You didn't even tell them how to get in touch with you, man. I hope
Call
you
or
did.
text me call or text me at 704-981-1191, and then my email address is just info @sargiscpa.com. Thank you for that.
I love that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's great. Well, great always seeing you. And being in your presence. You're just such a joy to be around, and you ooze positivity. So I love
Don't
that
make me
about you.
blush. Don't make me blush.
You're great at what you do, and I love your savvy way. So I really hope people reach out to you as well, because I know your strengths. I've learned a lot about you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Debra Votta, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Sardis. Have a great day.